Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and you're all very welcome to our webinar this morning. My name is Sean Finan. I'm the CEO of the Irish Bioenergy Association. And this morning, we're delighted to welcome you all to our webinar, number 47, where this morning we'll be discussing our Solid Biomass Capacity Statement report. The report demonstrates Ireland's potential and ability for biomass heating solutions. So before we get into the report and our speakers this morning, just by way of introduction, for those attendees this morning who haven't been part of our webinar series before, we work as the representative body for the Irish bioenergy industry in the island of Ireland. And our membership spans solid biomass, biogas, biomethane, biofuels, biochar, wood fuels, and energy crops. Our main work is in the area of policy, lobbying, and advocacy, knowledge transfer, and indeed assisting and helping members. Our membership is broad and diverse, and if anyone is interested in becoming a member of the association, feel free to get in touch with us and we can discuss the various membership options available. We also roll out a number of research and development projects, and further information about the association is available on our website, www.irbea.org. Just to bring to your attention, we also have a series of fact sheets. If any of you would like to engage with these, and we're also looking to grow this series. And if anyone has any ideas about potential future fact sheets, please get in touch with us. And just to let you know that all our previous webinars are all available on our YouTube channel, and a link to the YouTube channel is available on the IrBEA website. So we've covered a wide, diverse range of topics to date, and there's really something for everyone there, no matter what sector you're involved in. And we would really encourage you to engage with the webinars that may be of interest to you. And also, there's an open invitation to anyone attending this morning who would like to engage in our webinar series as a presenter. We're currently looking at webinars for the new year now. So please get in touch if you have any ideas about how a product, project, or a piece of work that you're engaged in that you'd like to showcase through our webinar series. To date, we've had over 2,000 unique visitors to our webinar series, so it's quite a large, diverse attendance over the last number of years, and it's a good platform for anyone that would like to showcase what they do. So please get in touch if you would like to discuss further. So this morning's webinar is number 47, as I said. We'll present to you the main findings of the Solid Biomass Capacity Statement. That will be followed by a short panel discussion, Q&A, and a reminder that if you have questions during the course of the presentation, please submit them via the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen, and we will endeavour to answer as many of your questions as possible. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by our speakers. So Eugene Hendrick, who's chair of the WFQA Steering Committee and also the IrBEA Solid Biomass Group. I'm also delighted to be joined by Noel Gavigan, our technical executive. And unfortunately, our colleague Stephen McCormick can't join us this morning due to issues he had with power outages since the storm at the weekend. So unfortunately, Stephen can't join us, so I'll present the slides that Stephen was supposed to deliver at the end of the presentation. We're looking, as I said, to build our program for 2025. Wednesday mornings is our slot at this time from 9:30 to 10:30, and we're currently finalising what the next webinar will be and when it will take place. But if you are interested, please get in touch. So to introduce the Solid Biomass Capacity Statement, I just have a few slides about what the document is, its objectives, its main content, chapters, different capacities it looks at, and indeed other areas of interest. I'll then hand over to Eugene, who will go through the resource availability currently and in the future, and focus a bit on sustainable forest management and all of those aspects. And then I'll hand over to Noel, who'll take it through about air quality, sustainability again, how to initiate a project, and a number of other key aspects outlined within the document. And then we conclude with a few slides about the policy setting at the moment and the support schemes that are available and all those areas. And just to let you know that the document is available on our website and is available for you to view there. And also, I know it has been circulated throughout our membership. But if you would like hard copies of the document, we have hard copies available. There will be a cost associated with postage, so please get in touch with us, and we're happy to facilitate and organise for hard copies to be sent out to you. So, why was this document developed in the first place? It was developed to address the perceptions of biomass that exist out there, and we've heard about them over the last number of years. Those perceptions could be both negative and positive, but by and large, they underestimated the potential resource available, the capacity of the sector to deliver. And this document addresses all of those issues and demonstrates really what the sector could do from a decarbonisation perspective of our heating systems. And in the document, we address the capacities of the sector in terms of the solid biomass resource, the supply chain, the heating technology capacity which exists, the considerable capacity which exists from a systems design and install perspective, what knowledge, training and skills are in the sector, the financial models and supports available, and then how to maybe appraise a project and engage regarding development of a project, and what contractual arrangements are there and available for heat users who wish to engage with some of our members who would be heat suppliers. And also the back of the document contains 12 case studies showcasing various different sectors which have embraced biomass heating solutions. And as I said, the link to view the document is available there through the IrBEA website. It's in the downloads and resources section on the tabs at the top of the homepage of the website. Before I go on to the next slide, I'd just like to acknowledge the people that helped and contributed to the development of this piece of work. Thanks to the co-authors and also the IrBEA members who contributed. I'd like to thank Teresa O'Brien for the cover design and organising this webinar. Thanks also to Amanda Wilkinson Halkin Design for her work on the design of the report, the graphic design work. I'd like to also acknowledge the contributions from Arrivo, CHP Mechanical, Clear Power, Quilcha, Inner Power, Meridian Vortex, and Woodco Energy towards the compilation of the biomass case studies and the information they provided regarding those. And finally, we would also like to especially acknowledge the information received from the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine COFOR Council regarding the biomass resource availability and projections. And the work that's outlined in this document is only a small part of the larger piece of work done by the COFOR Council, and that's referenced, there's references in this presentation to those documents, and we would encourage you to consult with the COFOR Council website or web page where you can view the full copies of those documents. So moving on, so what were the objectives of this document? And was to provide evidence to the heat market regarding the capacities across the sector to use solid biomass as a decarbonised heating solution. Look at the current and future availability of solid biomass in Ireland, and also very clearly outline the supply network that exists to mobilise the resource. That resource mobilisation in the form of chipping and other capacity to mobilise it, transport it. We also showcased the capacity around design, install, technology, and all of those areas. As some people are not aware, some industry users are not aware of that capacity which exists. Sustainability is a huge area associated with this sector, and indeed air quality. So we look at those areas, and there's quite a lot of work on the financial models and the various heat contractual arrangements that could be deployed by energy users, and Noel will cover those in his presentation. And then the examples of parts of the country, indeed users who have deployed solid biomass heating solutions. So the supply chain from a wood chip, firewood, wood pellet and wood briquette perspective is shown on the map there. So the Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Scheme, which is managed and administered by the Irish Bioenergy Association, and NOLA as the auditor certifies suppliers to ISO 17225. The WFQA requirements satisfy the SSRH, the Support Scheme for Renewable Heat, and the Solid Fuel Regulation requirements. And most recently, IrBEA has engaged with SURE, which is a German-based certification body around sustainability certification. So if there are any members on the call today who are looking to engage regarding sustainability certification, they should get in touch with us and we can give you the information that you need around what's involved in the SURE process. Just to note that this map is continually updated. It's probably even updated since this was drawn down and put into the slide here. The updated map is available on www.wfqa.org. I'd like to also acknowledge the contribution made by the Department of Agriculture for the promotion of the Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Scheme, and acknowledge that support. And without the department's support, it would not be possible to promote the sector and promote the Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Scheme. Moving on, there are different types of wood fuels. In this document, we focus very strongly on the wood chip and wood pellet as options, but also there are wood briquettes and firewood. The firewood being more used at a domestic level, and also wood briquettes at a domestic level, whereas wood pellets can be used at a domestic level, but also at a commercial industrial level, and then wood chip at a commercial industrial level also. So just they're the four different types of wood fuels which are profiled within the document. Just to put the role of bioenergy in context in Ireland, but also across Europe and globally, both the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and the International Energy Agency identify rapid deployment of modern bioenergy and bioenergy with carbon capture and storage as crucial to reducing fossil fuel emissions and achieving net zero. And that's outlined within the document, and there's a section on that. And bioenergy is Europe's largest source of renewable energy, and the chart here is in the document, but it also shows that biomasses and renewable wastes accounted for 58.9% of EU consumption of renewable energy per type in 2021. That figure hasn't changed dramatically in 2022, or indeed up to this point. And as you can see there, of that 58.9%, over 70% of that is solid biofuels. So that would be solid biomass. The remainder is liquid fuels, gaseous fuels, and charcoal. And also municipal waste used to produce biogases and other renewable fuels. But if you look then at the heat situation in Ireland, the renewable heat situation in Ireland, we're at a very low level. The percentage of heat from renewable sources at an EU level is 22.9%, whereas Ireland is at 5.2%. So we're the laggard really from a European perspective, and the lowest in Europe around renewable heat. So that shows you the huge opportunity which exists, first of all, with the right supports and mobilisation, but also the scale of the effort that's required in order to achieve the targets which are set out for us. And if you compare that to 68.6% in Sweden, where they have the vast majority of that 68.6% is solid biomass, where they have quite a developed supply chain for biomass heating. So it just shows you the large challenge we face on one hand, but also the opportunity that we have as a country to deploy a wide range of technologies to satisfy the renewable heating requirements. Moving on, the document sets out the capacities across the relevant areas. So I've said about the resource, which Eugene is going to talk to, and Noel will talk to the other three in his slides: the supply chain, the biomass heating, and the training, knowledge, and skills. So now I'd like to hand over to Dr. Eugene Hendrick. So thanks very much to Eugene for all his work and efforts in terms of this report and this statement. And Eugene will now present to you his slides. So over to you, Eugene.
Thanks very much, Sean, and good morning, everybody. I just go to the first slide. So before I start, I just want to acknowledge some work that was done. Well, a lot of work that was done in relation to the supply side by Henry Phillips, who is a forestry consultant and who has worked a lot on the national roundwood production forecast that the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine issue every 5 years. So most of this work is down to the actual numbers are down to Henry. I wanted to start basically just to outline, some of the key points about sustainable forest management and the supply of solid biomass. So in Ireland, it's derived from sustainable forest management practices and techniques. And as Sean previously mentioned about SURE certification, under the RED 3 directive, the material has to come from sustainably managed sources. So it's very important that the solid biomass is derived from sustainable forest management practices and techniques. So a lot of the material for what we're talking about here comes from forest thinning, the removal of specified biomass. So what we're talking about specified biomass is, we come back to that later, but it's mainly the residues that are left after final felling of a forest before regeneration. And it's just part of forestry harvesting operations if it's planned correctly, into assortments. The material that the solid biomass material normally goes to produce firewood or wood chip. And then if for residues from sawmilling, that can be for wood pellets. That's the main source of material for wood pellets, wood pellet production. So in relation to the compliance with the RED 3 directive and the sustainable forest management, the felling license system in Ireland, as we all know, is mandatory, and it's used in terms of our certification system in the WFQA as a key element in wood fuel quality certification. So all the wood that's sold by our members is from licensed felling operations, licensed by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. And we have an annual audit and check on that for all our members. Thinning and energy wood removals. So when you thin out a forest and you take out the energy wood, you enhance the overall productivity of the forest, because you're basically taking out smaller trees, poorly formed trees, and you let the remaining trees grow faster, and they're higher quality trees. So it's a win-win situation for both energy wood and for roundwood saw log production later on in the rotation of the forest. And thinning allows for the faster production of saw log trees, because when you give more space to trees, they grow faster than otherwise. And then they can be harvested in production of long-lived solid wood products for use in the construction industry. A lot of these drivers I'm talking about here around about, climate change mitigation. So the thinning of the forest putting it into energy, and of course then letting the trees grow faster and then harvesting at a later stage. That all speaks to climate change mitigation. And they're one of the main areas of mitigation by the forest sector. We often think about mitigation as being, sequestration in the forest, and that's very important. Of course, it's important to expand that, but it's also, it's part of the story of mitigation. It's also about displacing fossil fuels, particularly in relation to heating, high efficiency heating use of forest biomass for energy, and then in the substitution through the use of solid saw log materials and board products in terms of displacing concrete, steel, plastics, and so on. And it says there, wood products displace higher carbon intensity materials, concrete, one of the main ones, and cement is one of the main sources of emissions in its production as well, and steel, and they also store, solid wood products store carbon over extended periods. So basically the point I wanted to make here is it's based part of a cycle. We're taking an energy assortment, as we call it, out of the forest at thinning, or if you take out residues at the end, or you put into pellets from sawdust. It's all part of the cycle. It's all part of the story in terms of the contribution that forests make to climate change mitigation. So when you process sawn timber, use about half the volume of the log. and the remainder is soft cuts, chips and sawdust. Now, a lot of that can go into board production, but some of it can go into and can be used and also used as energy on site for drying or whatever of sawn timber, but also some of it can go into for pellet manufacture. And as I said, there are all co-product streams of potential energy uses, and as I said, ideal for wood pellet manufacture. So there's a table in the report that shows, and a lot of work went into this. We did a lot of iteration, and Sean mentioned that there's 2 COFORD reports coming out. They're not quite ready yet. They're just about to come out. So there's 2 reports that you'll see on the COFORD website hopefully in the coming weeks. One is looking at the production of the production numbers in relation to solid forest-based biomass over the period up to 2040. And as I said, a lot of work has gone into that. We've re-looked at the forecast, the overall national forecast, and we've looked into the potential for energy from the energy assortment harvest. And I suppose the take-home message here is that at the moment, if you look at the SEAI report, which is being published today, the Energy in Ireland and the accompanying data, there's around about 10 petajoules, or 1.5. That converts to roughly 1.5 million tons of green biomass being used at the moment in terms of the harvest. And most of that material, this energy I talk about is what's actually produced on the island. Now, there is a small level of import of biomass, but in terms of any energy value, 93% of the biomass and the supply is sourced on the island. So, you know, it's the vast majority is indigenously produced, sustainably produced. And then if you go down to 2035 there, you'll see that the potential production of energy assortments goes up from about 1.6 at the moment. It goes up to about 2.4 million tons. So there's by 2035 it's 2.5 million tons. So there's a very, very substantial potential to increase our level of sustainably produced forest-based biomass over that period of time from the forest sector. It does decline thereafter, but that can be filled in through various ways, either by, you know, these forecasts are quite conservative. They make an assumption about level of demand, but also level of harvest. But you can sustainably increase the level of harvest quite a lot, depending on the level of demand. So that's an important point. But in round numbers, we have the potential to increase our production by the middle of the next decade to over 2.5 million tons, an increase of 1 million tons of green forest-based biomass. So that's, and just to say, all of those trees are in the ground. They're all forests that are there. We're not talking here about new forests or afforestation rates. These are all forests that are coming on stream that were planted over the last couple of decades. So, you know, that's really, really, and that speaks to the whole area of Sean's earlier slide there about the heat sector. So, you know, we're, as he said, we're a laggard in relation to heat, renewable heat. So, you know, this material is ideally suited for heating. And main emphasis on today is for commercial and industrial scale heating, which biomass is ideally suited for. For high temperature heating, biomass is used extensively across Europe, and it's also extensively used for district heating, which we're only just scratching the surface of in Ireland at the moment. Now, the supply is limited, as you can see. It's not there's only so much we can produce, but if you look at the marginal effect, so we're talking about increasing from 5 going upwards, we can make a reasonably substantial input into those numbers. So if you're talking about what we need the level of increase that we need, then forest-based biomass has a significant role to play in terms of heating. As I said, at all scales nearly, but particularly at industrial and commercial. Next slide, please. So we also looked at recently, well, in 2023, we looked at what we call specified harvesting, biomass harvesting. So this is the material that's left after felling of forests, as I said, after clear felling or removal, which always is followed by reforestation. By law, you have to reforest, as you probably all know, the area that's been felled. So it's a valuable renewable biomass resource. It's not willy-nilly. You have to plan it out. And in this document, the specified biomass harvesting document that IrBEA has published, and we had input from, you see there, Noel Gavigan and Ken Worrell and myself and others inputted to this document. There's a system whereby you can, at final felling, you can put aside, to want of a better word, an energy assortment based on tops and branches. And you leave that material on site until the needles have fallen off. And then you can go back in and harvest this material. And when the needles have fallen off, and it has dried to a certain extent. It's ideally suited for large scale energy uses, particularly in the heating sector. And we have included that what we call assortment in the numbers that you've just seen. That system is included, but it can be expanded. But again, I want to emphasize this is sustainably produced, and it's it might look pretty rough stuff, but it's actually can be quite high quality, because the important thing is to have the needles fall off, because you don't want needles. You want the needles or the leaves, whichever species you're talking about, to stay on the site, because to maintain site productivity. And this speaks back again to the Renewable Energy Directive, the RED III directive, so it's important element of compliance with that. And then, of course, you don't want any needles or any green material or whatever when you're combusting biomass. It doesn't work well with boilers and so on. It's not a material that you want. So that was published in 2023, and it's up on the IrBEA website. So there's also potential from other sources. Sustainably, again, to grow biomass supply further. There's agriculture, green waste, coppice, short rotation forestry. That could be anywhere. It's a hard number to put on, but it could be anywhere with 300 to 400,000 tons per annum, in addition to the biomass resource from forestry. So that's out there as well. Again, there's sustainability issues around site treatment and so on, but it's covered. There's a report that Sean and Noel and colleagues have put together on agricultural green waste and its potential uses. We're not talking here about taking away hedgerows or anything. It's sustainably produced material, and it's, as I say, hard to put a full number on it, but it's somewhere around about 300 to 400,000 tons per annum, in addition to the biomass resource from forestry. And next slide, Sean. So this is, I think it's one of my final slides, if not the final one. We can also increase the level of forest-based biomass, or biomass generally, by willow coppice. And if we engage in a scheme, if the department relaunched the willow scheme, then we could potentially increase the level of, if we plant about 2,000 hectares of willow a year, we could eventually reach, by 2040, we could have an annual production approaching 20 petajoules, which would be make quite a significant input to energy provision, renewable energy. So I think that's all my slides. Sean, is it?
That's it, Eugene. Yeah, we're going to Noel now. So just introducing Noel, and Noel, you're going to take the next few slides.
No, thanks very much, Sean. I presume you can hear me there okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Now, so again, just to go into the supply chain, I suppose one of the main purposes of this report was to show the capacity of the industry in Ireland and abroad in terms of meeting this demand, and is this logistically possible? So the first thing we look at there is the supply chain of raw materials, also looking at the design and installation capacity of the actual equipment itself. So within the report, we're looking at what the capacity is within Ireland and that. First of all, in terms of the wood fuel supply network, that exists. We have, as seen from the map earlier on, we have a large number of suppliers around the country that are of significant scale, are already supplying industrial levels of biomass and both industrial facilities, commercial facilities, and to the domestic sector. So there is ample capacity there to produce that material. We have the know-how, we have the equipment to do so, and we have, as Eugene has pointed out, we have the raw material as well. So that was the first part of it. The next thing then is in terms of designing and installing plant. First of all, the plant itself, the boiler systems are at this stage a very well developed technology. As from Sean's earlier slide, the largest proportion of renewable heat in Europe is actually provided by biomass, and that technology is at this stage very well developed. There are numerous manufacturers across Europe, but also we have a number of them here in Ireland as well at both a small and large scale. So there is capacity there. There's plenty of examples around Europe and in Ireland of existing plants, and the report itself goes into list some of those examples at the end of the report, Irish-based examples. To support that, we put together a training program for biomass practitioners, both in terms of the designers and the installers. So one of the things that is always prevalent in these is they must be designed correctly, they must be sized correctly, they must be able to work correctly within the plant itself. I'm going to that a little bit later in a later slide, but we did find it very important to ensure that, similar to if you're going to get a gas boiler installed, you have to have a registered gas installer. So it's not on a statutory footing like gas at the moment, but it's something we would look to in the future, that the designers and installers would be properly regulated so that we're ensuring that the systems that are put in place are robust. At the moment, that support or that assurance has been provided by the industry itself. And in many cases, you will find that the large manufacturers of these boilers won't allow anybody to design or install it without their say, because they understand what works and what doesn't work. So we've had plenty of people involved with us. Want to go on to the next slide there, Sean? In terms of the annual requirement for biomass, there's a relatively simple formula for this. We've just some examples there in terms of the boiler size. So typically your hotels or commercial units would be say 250 kilowatt or 500 kilowatt up to a megawatt. So if you're using wood chip or wood pellet, there's a certain level of tonnage that you require on those. Now that's just an indicator based on a certain number of hours. Going into your large industrial plant, there is a number of examples in Ireland at the 5 and 10 megawatt scale. So, and there's a larger than that again. So, you know, those capacities are there. There is up to 20 megawatts. There's one larger than that in the country. So, and they're the sort of tonnages that they will require on an annual basis. Now, the annual requirement is a function of a number of different factors, and we have a formula just put in there, which it's relatively easy for anyone in industry to work out. So it's basically the boiler size in kilowatts multiplied by, that should be the annual hours. Maybe that was omitted from the formula, just we transferred it into PowerPoint here, but the annual hours. So industrial plant, you'll tend to see them running for 8,000, 8,500 hours a year, whereas your space heating plant might only be working for 1,500 hours. So there's quite a difference there in terms of quantity. The fuel energy content multiplied by the efficiency of the boiler. So it's a relatively simple formula to work out and easy to determine the quantities required. And that leads itself into the raw material then as well, in terms of when you're looking to source that material. Going back to what Sean was saying earlier about SURE and the sustainability side of it, the RED 2 directive and becoming the RED 3 directive, like there was questions over the sustainability of biomass a couple of years ago. So the RED 2 and RED 3 directive have really done a huge job in determining the exact criteria that you need to ensure that it's done correctly. And we are finding that it's a very robust system. It's been changed from RED 2 to RED 3. So anywhere there was a few issues, you know, the biomass system now is one of the most highly viewed in Europe and what you call it, regulated. So we're quite happy with that. So all material going forward will need to be certified for sustainability for the larger plant. In terms of the sustainability and air quality, There is a number of directives that stand over this. I'd mentioned the RED 2 directive already. The directives we've listed there are in terms of the emissions. So the other question that often comes up is, well, what about emissions? Be it particulates is usually the issue that comes about, particulates or smoke. So at this stage, it's been an engineering issue, and we've been able to engineer out the emissions largely from, in particular, industrial plants. You can put in mitigation measures. It's all to do with how your combustion management works, your fuel quality, but also your post combustion flue gas treatment. And you can bring those right down in level. So that's something that's controlled under the IED directive for larger plants. The medium combustion plant for your generally the plant we will tend to see in Ireland. And then the domestic side, you have then things like the Eco Design Directive, which sets standards from everything from stoves up to boiler systems for a small commercial plant. So they're very robust in how they've done it. So I suppose the main steps you would need to look at when considering a project, and this report is there to support this, is first of all, in designing a system, the first thing you need to do is to assess your heat demand and the needs. Now, the key things you need to look at there are, first of all, the temperatures. So are you looking at space heating? So you want 70 degrees or 80 degrees, or are you looking at industrial heating? Do you want 250 degrees of steam? You want all of that to be easily provided by biomass. But obviously that's a major factor. The other thing is the load profile. So is it something where you need a steady demand of heat throughout the day and throughout the year, or is there peaks and troughs throughout the demand cycle? Are those peaks and troughs on an hourly basis, or are they on a monthly basis? All that needs to be looked at before you can design up your system. But all very valuable information to ensure that your plant runs efficiently. And all of that can be gathered from either the plant design itself, whatever you're looking need the heat for, or from previous heat usage. In terms of planning and preparation, then all of that leads into your feasibility study. You will need obviously the correct permits, planning permission. There's various different regulations that come into place. There is some incentives like the RED 2 or the SSRH that can come into place there to assist. And it's all about getting those in line to see how well the project stacks up. And in terms of the planning itself, there's plenty of information out there for planners. We've actually produced some documents to assist in the EPA requirements as well. So it's quite a stage well known by the EPA. In terms of selecting an installer and contractor, often you do that relatively early in the system because they will be involved in the design and putting the proposal together, and quite likely the planning as well. So in some stages, some will go into larger scale plants, look for planning first, and then you get the installer in. That's can be done too. You get outline planning permission in general, what the plant will look like. And but it's important from your own perspective and from everyone's perspective that you get somebody that's reputable, has experience, knows what they're doing, going back to designers and installers register, going back to the manufacturers to make sure that, there are plenty of examples that they will have out there to look at. But we would recommend that you spend a bit of time in selecting the correct contractor and correct people to do this. So within that, then you want to look at the installation and commissioning, the ongoing operation and maintenance of the plant itself, and just the general run like that. So just finally then to look at some of the biomass heating and supply contractual arrangements. So there's three different general approaches we see. One is an owner-operator approach. So basically you are going to contract somebody to install the system, and you are then going to fuel it, operate it, carry out the maintenance, and manage it. You'll see that a lot in smaller operations. Or in operations where they have a lot of experienced personnel on site. Sawmills, for example, might often take on a lot of that work themselves because they have the staff to do it. The second option you would see is where it is owner operated, but they will have external maintenance contracts, usually with the initial installer, to maintain the plants, and there'll be certain arrangements made with that. And the final one we would see then is ESCO supply contracts. Just want to click on the first one there, Sean. So just I suppose that's a standard system you would have seen where you had an oil tank, oil boiler feeding into a system. I'll just click it on again there. In this scenario, we're putting in a chip store or a wood pellet store with a wood chip boiler. I'll click on again there, please, John. And that supplies into the building itself. Now, with an ESCO supply contract, I suppose in this diagram, the ESCO supply contract is represented by the red dashed line. And what happens there is your ESCO company will come in, they will put in the chip store, the chip boiler, They will have built it, they will manage it, they will operate it, they will fuel it, and there will be a heat meter. The only thing that the heat user needs to see is a heating bill. They're not concerned with what's the other side of the red line. They're just paying a heating bill based on how much heat they actually need. And all of the management of the system itself is outside. It's not something that they need to be involved in. That tends to suit very well to certain facilities like hotels. Their main business is not operating a boiler, it's running a hotel. So they tend to like contracts like that because they just want heat on demand, and it suits their business portfolio as well. So that's just some of the basis of it. You'll find all its supported within the report as well. So it's geared towards the user. So I'll hand you back to you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks very much, Noel. And just a reminder to our attendees this morning, if you have any questions on any aspect, please put them in through the Q&A tab on the screen that's there. Okay, so I'm going to present now just a couple of slides that our colleague Stephen was supposed to present this morning. So really, it's just the document, the report outlines some of the financial supports available for biomass heating. The main support that's available for biomass heating systems is through the support scheme for renewable heat. That has been in operation for the last number of years. It is an operational support for biomass heating systems. It also does provide support to biogas fuel systems plus heat pumps as well. It's administered by the SEI, and full details are available on the SEI website. Indeed, if anyone wants any further information about the SRH, they should get in touch with us, and we're happy to provide that information and any information that you require. In addition, the report outlines some specific support that's available to farmers through the Target Agricultural Modernisation Scheme, and that's a 40% capital grant for farmers for biomass boilers. This is different to the SSRH in that the SSRH is a 15-year operational support, whereas this is a capital grant. By and large, we have moved away from capital grants for boilers because in the past we've had capital grants and the boilers were turned off depending on how fossil fuel prices fluctuated. So generally, operational support is favoured in terms of biomass systems. Moving on, the document outlines some of the relevant policy measures and documents which are out there at the moment and which help and point in the direction of the need for biomass heating to solve a lot of our decarbonisation challenges. So in the middle of last year, the middle of this year, earlier this year, I think around May, June, the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment published the roadmap for the decarbonisation of industrial heat. This identified pathways for the decarbonisation of renewable decarbonisation of industrial heat by renewable sources. Biomass was identified alongside biomethane electrification as the technology options that were favoured. We're happy with this report. There are some aspects of it we have highlighted to the department that we'd like looked at, but by and large, this indicates that there is a growing awareness and a growing acknowledgement that biomass plays a significant part as a solution to industrial heat decarbonisation. The Climate Action Plan is another document which you would all be familiar with. It sets out Ireland meets its climate action targets, including the role of various different technologies and fuels, including biomass. I suppose our issue with the Climate Action Plan over the last number of iterations is that it has been quite specific on certain technologies and hasn't given biomass the focus that it does require and the potential solution it provides. So we look forward to seeing future iterations of the Climate Action Plan being further advanced from the perspective of utilising more bioenergy solutions for decarbonisation of heat. And then the other document of relevance here is the National Energy and Climate Plan. So the latest version was submitted to the EU Commission in July 2024. This document is out to 2030 and says how the country is going to reach its energy and climate ambition. And two interesting points from this document is that the NECP recognises that, and I quote, solid biomass represents the lowest cost decarbonisation option for heating in terms of cent per kilowatt or euro per tonne of CO2 abated compared to other renewable heating technologies. And then in addition to that, it states that biomass heating is more cost effective than heat pumps in terms of cost per square meter and cost per ton of CO2 abated or emissions saved. So we very much welcome these statements, and I think the evidence that is referenced in the NECP is around the SEI Pathfinder program. And again, this confirms what we have been aware of for a long number of years about solid biomass being the cheapest decarbonisation option from a heating perspective, and a lot cheaper than some of the other technology options which have been actively promoted over the last number of years. That being said, all technologies and all solutions are required, given the scale of the challenge that we have as a country in terms of heat decarbonisation. There is a strong role for biomass, but there's also a role for electrification, and different consumers and different users will decide what technology option suits them best. But we would be actively encouraging them to really strongly consider solid biomass as being the solution of choice. The other piece of work which we're near finalisation of, and I know some of the members on the call will have probably heard that a few times, but we have done a work on a cost and carbon abatement analysis that was done by XD Consulting. We're at the concluding stages of finalising this. The model was quite complex. We had a few problems with it, and we've addressed those. So what this piece of work does is compares the various different decarbonisation options for heating our homes, commercial buildings, and industrial processes. It compares them on a cost and carbon basis, with the report focusing on the financial cost as a function of capital and ongoing expenditure, while examining the greenhouse gas emission reduction achieved through the various different renewable fuels which are available. And that will generate then a financial cost per ton of CO2 equivalent saved over an extended period of time. And what the report is really saying is that biomass as a renewable fuel option is competitive from a cost and carbon abatement perspective across all scenarios modelled. And it's quite interesting when you look at that, how certain factors have a big influence in terms of those costings. And we will be publishing this report shortly. The final document which we refer to in the report is the Ireland's Forest Strategy. This strategy was developed by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, and it does recognise there is recognition within the forest strategy of the role of biomass and wood fuels as an outlet for thinning and residue materials created through sustainable forest management. And it does recognise the potential and use of sustainable biomass as a local fuel source to displace fossil fuels in the energy sector. So they're just the documents and relevant policy papers that are currently of note to the solid biomass sector and are detailed within the report. Finally, I'm coming to the end. I think this is my last slide. It's just to say that the document does outline 12 different case studies. So as you can see, the case studies which we have outlined are one, or maybe in some cases two, installations per sector. This is just to prove that biomass is currently being deployed right across all the different sectors which exist within our country, from dairy processing. There's an example there of a healthcare facility which is using biomass. We have industrial manufacturing using biomass in CJ Sheeran's. There are two horticulture applications, case studies. Horswood Nurseries, Wexford Tomatoes, and O'Hanlon Herbs. We profile St Mary's College Drumcondra as an education sector case study. Teagasc Oak Park as a public sector case study. In the leisure sector, the watershed in Kilkenny, which is also a biomass user. And then we have two agricultural sector ones, one in poultry and one in animal nutrition. And then you move on to the larger scale, which is Stellis, based in Kerry, in the pharmaceutical area. And then in the hotel sector and the tourism sector on Court in Donegal, in the tourism sector. So we really appreciate all of these companies agreeing that their systems would be profiled over a 2-page. There's 2 pages per case study. right across these sectors. And we also thank the installers and the designers who helped and assisted in providing the technical information associated with each of these systems. So they're all can be read, all those case studies, in the document itself. So that concludes the formal presentation. Again, if any of you would like to get in touch, my contact information is there. Feel free to get in touch at any time. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to invite Noel and Eugene to turn on your cameras. And I know we have a number of questions and are conscious of time. And we hope to finish by 10:30, which is only a couple of minutes away. So if you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A tab on your screen. Okay, the first one there is one I probably could take myself. When is the next biomass practitioners course being run? From Connor. Thanks, Connor, for your question, your attendance. So we recently we ran a course in the autumn. That was the first course that we've had in a while. And I suppose the answer to your question is the course is run based on demand. So we have a very experienced trainer in David Palmer, who comes from Glasgow to deliver this course. And we're interested in running another course, should the demand be there. I have a couple of expressions of interest for the next round of the course. And if there's anyone on the call today that would like to participate in the next round of the Biomass Practitioners course, please get in touch with me and we will add your name to the list. And we would hope potentially to be able to run a course in the spring of 2025. There is a cost associated with the course. It's a 2-day course, but it's a very detailed course, and anyone that has completed it has been very happy with it. Eugene, probably a question for you. It's from Siobhan, and thanks again, Siobhan, for your attendance this morning. You mentioned about Willow Coppice and the Willow scheme. I suppose the question is, how likely is it that DFM will open the Willow scheme again? I think maybe just to caveat that on the basis that your point on Willow was around making up for any shortcomings in the supply. Isn't that correct? If it was necessary for it. But what's your answer to that? Would you have any indications, Eugene, about opening the Willow scheme again?
I don't have any, but I think seriously, it's an important thing to consider, because if we're serious about biomass, we need to grow to scale, and and we need it fairly soon, because in terms of the imperatives of climate change and energy, the heating sector. So, look, I think IrBEA will be looking to see, can we make representations to the department about it and see, can we get it going? As Sean said, and I said in my presentation, there's an extra 1 million green tons going to come or potentially come out of the forest sector. But again, we do need more biomass, because I see it as a very strong potential around district heating systems, and not just district heating, but bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. And I think that's where Willow Coppice would be ideally suited to bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, because a very short turnaround time and a very quick recapture of the carbon from the harvest. So look, it's probably not immediately likely, but we'll work on it and see what response we can get from the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine.
Okay, keep going. We'll keep going then. It's more probably of a comment there on biomass. Is the market, are hospitals, hotels, schools, or new blocks of flats being expected to uptake the heating scheme? I envisaged by the heating scheme, I mean the SRH. The SRH is available to hotels, hospitals, schools, any non-domestic fueled and non-domestic heat users. Question there, maybe for Eugene or Noel. Any update on removing brash solid specified biomass harvest from sites, if not noted on the felling license? Not sure if it's something to bring up in this presentation, but it wasn't brought up in this presentation. So just to make you aware there for that question, we have written to the department seeking clarification around this issue. We know it's an issue. We haven't had any feedback as of yet, and we will follow up with the department again on this. And Eugene, do you want to elaborate on this particular point and the issue here, or have I mentioned it enough?
I think you've mentioned it enough, but just to say again, as I said, it's an ideal assortment. It's the quickest one to to pay back in terms of carbon savings, carbon debt. Because basically, if you don't take it off the site, it's going to go back to the atmosphere. So if you can put it into displacing a fossil fuel, it can, it's pretty immediate payback in terms of carbon savings. So it's an important assortment.
Okay, a question there from Fergus. Thanks, Fergus. Fuel availability is cited by large energy users as an issue for biomass adoption. Apart from this report, who should large energy users engage with to get certainty on fuel supply when developing a project? So, Eugene or Noel, do you want to talk on that? I guess the COFORD work is something which would be something you probably suggest, Eugene, would it?
In addition to the global figure that I gave, there's a tool available on the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine website, which you can interrogate, and it can give you local forecasts within fixed radii of any particular point in the country. And the numbers in that sort of aggregate, it's the full country, but it's basically how they on a micro level, how you can find out. So you can keep extending your radius of your supply, and you can find out what's becoming available. And it does it on a yearly basis. So that's a very powerful tool, actually, if you're planning. If you just want a reassurance, but of course your supplier, if you have a supplier contract, they'll have also a good information, a good knowledge about what's potentially available. But that's a very useful tool at the planning stage as well. If you wanted to support a planning application or whatever the case may be in terms of the supply of the material, again, sustainably produced material, that's available on the DAPM website.
Okay. Again, I'd also, Fergus, there's the opportunity we could engage and provide specific context to the fuel supply network which exists out there in terms of and they could engage directly then with the energy users and discuss with them the volumes that they have and available and the contractual arrangements which could be entered into. I suppose the very reason for this report was to address that issue and to give some levels of certainty around that, because it is, as you say, a stick that's used to beat us with around adoption by large energy users. A comment more so, or a question, and maybe Noel, the resources there, what is needed most for the public sector to help the sector utilize it? So
I suppose engagement. I mean, the public sector we've had different engagement with various departments who are seeking to look at biomass. They didn't get as strong a signal as we would have liked from central government in this in the past. And I do think, when we look at how Europe has developed biomass and how it has advanced, it's like we're worse than Europe in terms of renewable heating, and largely because we've been ignoring biomass for the last number of years. And I think the opportunity is huge. I do think that we know we have loads of material. We know we have the know-how in putting these in, but I think it just needs a little bit of political buy-in at this point in time that this is really a resource that is available and ready to use. Will make a huge difference.
Okay, Eugene, do you want to comment on that further? What recourse is there? What's needed most from the public sector to help the sector utilize it?
Yeah, well, I think just a general point, I think it's important the public sector shows leadership, and goes into, takes on biomass, modern bioenergy, it's that's really, I think, what the role is, and that would be a pathway for others, for examples. But there are a lot, as we say in the report, there's lots of good examples out there already, in terms of the private sector and the
public sector too.
Excellent case studies there, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, there's just one of our attendees this morning asked for the link to be placed in the chat. So I've sent the link, I've put the link into the chat for the report. So again, that's just takes you to the webpage where the report can be accessed. So I think that's it. Just a comment there, where someone commented to say that they had quite a number of farmers who potentially would go into a willow coppa scheme. Equally, we've come across farmers that would never go near it because of what happened to them the last time. So we need to ensure that if we do a willow coppa scheme, that the market is delivers a return for this material.
I'll come into that, Sean, there for a second. I'll come into that a second there, Sean. The last willow scheme has ended possibly nearly a decade ago at this stage. But what we're finding now is the demand for biomass, including the willow that's still in the ground, and there's quite a bit of it out there, is very strong. Both from a point of using it in boilers, and I've seen quite a lot of it being used now in briquettes. So the demand is there, and definitely the know-how around using it is developed hugely. And also those that are utilizing it are stressing that we should be looking at willow, definitely from many places, but also considering a short rotation forestry product such as it could be eucalyptus or it could be poplar, but something that will be better for smaller plantations because your harvest interval will be longer. So there's definitely demand there now. Part of the issue we had many years ago, or one of the main issues was we developed crops, but the market hadn't fully developed at that stage. And in the early teens, we had a big issue where we planted a lot of material. The SSRH, or the RHI has been called, was promised each year for about 9 years, but it was never put in place. So demand never grew for the material. And that did create a very difficult place. The Department of Ag went out on a limb, put in their grant scheme, but it wasn't followed up by a scheme for the boilers. We're now in a very different environment, and you could say those early adopters, unfortunately, it might have been a bit too early, but now definitely the market is there. It's a very developed market, and there is an ample amount of demand out there. So I think, yes, it's a very good time to relook at it.
Okay, just two follow-on questions. Well, one is a comment, and the other is a question. Is there sufficient skills and expertise available for scaling up of biomass heat, or are there additional training needs in the sector? So, Eugene, do you want to comment on that? Or Noel?
I think it's more on Noel's side. Yeah.
Yeah, look, and there's definitely additional capacity there at the moment for new installs. So we have plenty of people out there, companies capable of installing additional boilers in supplying them. So there is capacity at the moment for without a doubt. It's not a shortage of those people. And if the sector needs to expand more, there's capacity to do that as well. But at the moment, look, there is sufficient skills for people to do it at the moment.
So, just to expand upon that, I know that we have a cohort of installers at an Irish level, but I know when I attend Bioenergy Europe events, there's quite an extensive network of skills and expertise across Europe as well, which are available and interested if the sector was to expand rapidly in Ireland, in addition to the existing personnel and companies which are there. So I wouldn't see skills and expertise for scaling up biomass heat as being a challenge. And regarding training needs in the sector, there's always an evolving need for training depending on the circumstances and the situation we find ourselves in. That training will get more specialist and be required, but we're very conscious as an association of those needs and continually engaging with the sector in terms of what they are and how do we fulfill them. And then just a top tip for large energy users considering biomass. This is from someone in the biomass supply business. Engage with suppliers early. They can assist at planning stage. Also, there is a long lead time to dry biomass, so suppliers need to be engaged early. So it's just for large energy users considering biomass, there's a lot of expertise out there, there's a lot of knowledge out there and information. And if we would like to get, if you would like information, anyone that's on the large energy user side, please get in touch with us, and we can easily refer you to the specialists in the sector, which can provide information and to you. So I think that's it. There's no other questions. We've addressed them all. I'd like to thank all our attendees this morning for attending the webinar. We've gone slightly over time. I'd like to also thank Eugene and Noel for your contributions. I'd like to thank Teresa for all her work behind the scenes to make this webinar possible. And with that, we'll call it a day, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year at our next webinar. I wish you all a happy Christmas and best wishes for 2025, and we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much. See you all again soon.